Okay, so onto the telescopes. As you can see, I have quite a few of them, but for this case, we're going to use a Celestron SLT 130 5.1 inch scope. You can see I have two of them. Short story is I borrowed this from a friend 2 years ago, haven't given it back. I want to stay friends, and I really like the scope, so I went ahead and bought this one. Another thing you'll notice is this telescope is really low with the tripod set all the way down. The reason why we do that is because, especially with these less expensive tripods and mounts, they tend to vibrate a lot. So the lower the center of gravity of the scope is, the lower the tripod is set, they tend to be less vibrating. They tend to be more stable. They don't vibrate as much. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is put the 2-inch adapter for the camera into the telescope. And Celestron does give you this nice little adapter for 2-inch. All right, we're going to put that in, and then we're going to go ahead and grab our camera assembly right here. And I usually put the camera in parallel to the tube. So slide that in carefully, and then screw down the thumb screws. And then just double check and make sure all your thumb screws are nice and tight. And another thing I do for safety reasons, or the safety of the camera at least, is sometimes the telescope, if you're slewing over several hours, the angle can drop 20 degrees. Right now the camera's in a nice gravity-friendly position. It wants to go down. But if the telescope focuses, say, 20 degrees here to the left, then gravity's going to want to pull the camera out. So as a safety issue, I just take the strap of the camera and wrap it around the pointer scope or the finder scope, just so if it does for some reason come out, it'll catch it. All right, then what I'll do is, of course, turn the camera on, okay, and then I'll let you set up the telescope yourself. But once the telescope's all set up, you salute to your first target. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is, one, make sure you're into the target. Then you're going to need to start focusing. Now, the focuser is probably the hardest part of this whole operation, because the only thing you have to see through is the viewfinder on the camera itself. I have tried to use live view before, but it just does not show the background images. They're just not bright enough to show up in the live view. So I need to use the actual viewfinder, which is tiny. If you're shooting something like Orion Nebula, they're pretty easy to see through the viewfinder, or a planet, something bright. But if you get to, say, something not so bright, like a galaxy, usually there's a brighter star in the foreground, and I'll be able to see that through the viewfinder, so I'll focus just on that bright star. And once that bright star looks good to me, usually the camera is pretty well focused. I'll take a few images, and if they turn out blurry, I'll move it in or out, whatever I need to do. There's a lot of trial and error there. And so basically, once the telescope slews to where you want, you get things focused. You want to wait a minute or two to let all the vibrations settle down. And usually it takes a few minutes for the gears that are inside the gear drive to mesh together well, and to get the slack out of them. So wait a few minutes to let all the vibrations go away, and then I'll go ahead and do a 20-second, 30-second exposure, holding in the remote button, and let it go. And then about 20 seconds later, the image will come up. Now, if that looks good and it looks focused, or if I want more light in, I'll go to my menu, go to my ISO sensitivity settings, change that to, say, a higher setting, say 1600, and then I'll wait at least 1 minute for the vibrations to settle down. Another thing I do is I don't move this around much, the cord for the remote shutter release, because that could also cause vibrations. And actually, I even breathe away from the telescope because I don't want any vapor, especially on a cold night, coming across the light path coming into the front of the scope. So that's pretty much it. It's a basic setup. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment section. Thank you.